Christianity in Canada. History, distribution, practical tensions, and youth trends. Introduction. Why focus on Christianity in Canada? Canada is globally recognized as a multicultural and religiously inclusive country. Yet its religious landscape is deeply rooted in colonial history and waves of immigration. Christianity stands as one of the most influential religious traditions within this context. According to the 2021 Canadian Census, approximately 53.3% of the population identifies as Christian, 29.9% Catholic, 23.4% Protestant, and other Christian denominations. Although its proportion has been declining steadily in recent years due to secularization, Christianity still plays a pivotal role in social services, education systems, cultural symbols, and public policy. Its distribution exhibits distinct regional and ethnic characteristics. Catholicism dominates in Quebec, Ontario, and the Atlantic provinces retain strong traditional Protestant roots. Western Canada serves as a key stronghold for evangelical and charismatic movements, and ethnic churches, e.g., Chinese-speaking churches, in urban immigrant communities are becoming increasingly active. These patterns not only reflect the inheritance and transformation of faith, but also mirror Canada's ethnic integration, secularization challenges, and shifts in youth culture. 1. Over 4 centuries, the historical context of Christianity in Canada. To understand contemporary Christianity in Canada, it must be examined within a long-term historical framework, as its development has always been intertwined with colonial governance, immigration waves, and nation-building. 1. Early colonization and faith implantation. French Catholicism and British Protestantism, 17th to 18th centuries. Starting in the 17th century, French Catholic missionaries, such as Jesuits, entered eastern North America alongside the fur trade, establishing churches and schools in what is now Quebec. These institutions became the spiritual core for Indigenous peoples and French-speaking immigrants. Meanwhile, British Protestantism, Anglicanism, Presbyterianism gradually penetrated the Atlantic provinces and southern Ontario. After Britain replaced France as the colonial ruler of North America in 1763, it guaranteed freedom of worship for Catholics, but designated Anglicanism as a semi-official religion, laying the foundation for the long-term coexistence and separation of these two major denominations. 2. Institutionalization and the emergence of plurality after Confederation, late 19th century, mid-20th century. Following Canada's Confederation in 1867, Christianity became further integrated with national institutions. Catholics and Anglicans received public funding for separate school systems in Quebec and Anglo-Canadian communities, respectively. Churches solidified their influence through social services, such as hospitals and orphanages. The early 20th century wave of immigration from Eastern and Southern Europe brought Orthodox Christianity, Lutheranism, and other denominations, breaking the monopoly of the two traditional sects and giving rise to Christianity's pluralistic denominational character. 3. Secularization and the rise of immigrant churches, late 20th century, present. After Quebec's Quiet Revolution in the 1960s, the Catholic Church's dominant social role in the province weakened significantly, and Canada as a whole entered a period of rapid secularization. Church attendance declined, and religion's influence on public policy diminished. Concurrently, the influx of immigrants from Asia and Africa fueled the growth of Chinese-speaking churches, Korean charismatic churches, and African evangelical churches. These immigrant churches not only provide religious services, but also serve as critical platforms for new immigrants to adapt to Canadian society. 2. Denominational landscape. From traditional sects to new immigrant forces. Christianity in Canada is not a monolithic system, but a complex mosaic of long-established traditional denominations, emerging immigrant churches, and new movements. 1. Roman Catholicism. Catholicism remains the largest Christian denomination in Canada, with its core stronghold in Quebec, where approximately 60% of the population identifies as Catholic. It also maintains vitality in immigrant communities, e.g., Latino, Filipino, in cities like Toronto and Montreal. Through parochial schools, healthcare systems, e.g., Toronto's St. Michael's Hospital, and social services, refugee assistance, support for vulnerable groups, the Catholic Church sustains its social influence. In recent years, however, it has faced challenges from secularization and church scandals. 2. Traditional Protestantism and mainstream denominations, Anglicanism, United Church, etc. Traditional Protestant denominations, represented by the Anglican Church of Canada and the United Church of Canada, were once the cultural core of Anglo-Canadian communities and made significant contributions to education and public welfare, e.g., the United Church's advocacy for the abolition of racial segregation and support for same-sex marriage. However, they have been most severely impacted by secularization in recent years, with declining membership and church closures. Some churches have responded by merging or shutting down. 3. Evangelical, charismatic, and immigrant churches. Over the past 3 decades, evangelical and Pentecostal/charismatic movements have expanded rapidly in Western Canada, British Columbia, Alberta, and urban immigrant communities. Representative churches include the Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada and Toronto's Catch the Fire Charismatic Church. These churches emphasize spiritual gifts, experiential worship, and social action, e.g., homeless outreach, youth counseling. They also leverage immigrant networks and mother tongue ministry, Chinese, Korean, Spanish, to attract large numbers of young immigrants and ethnic minorities. 3. Geographic and ethnic distribution. Which regions are Christian core areas? The distribution of Christianity in Canada is deeply tied to regional history and ethnic composition, exhibiting the characteristics of traditional Eastern Canada, emerging Western Canada, and diverse urban centers. 1. Quebec, the traditional stronghold of Catholicism. Although secularization has reduced church attendance, Catholicism remains embedded in language, festivals, e.g., Christmas, Easter, and cultural symbols, e.g., church architecture, serving as a key marker of French-Canadian identity. 2. Atlantic provinces, Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, etc. These regions have deep-rooted traditional Protestantism, with the Anglican, Presbyterian, and United Churches still maintaining stable influence in local communities. Churches here are often closely integrated with fishing culture and rural life. 3. Western provinces, British Columbia, Alberta, a thriving hub for evangelical and charismatic churches. Urbanization and immigration have driven churches toward youthfulness and multilingualism. Chinese-speaking evangelical churches in Vancouver and Calgary are among the largest in Canada. For metropolises like Toronto and Montreal, the most diverse regions for Christianity in Canada, hosting not only traditional Catholic cathedrals and Anglican churches, but also hundreds of immigrant churches in Chinese, Korean, Arabic, etc. Large charismatic churches attract cross-ethnic youth through modern worship and community services. 4. Legal, institutional, and public space tensions, balancing secularization and religious freedom. Canada's Charter of Rights and Freedoms, 1982, explicitly guarantees freedom of religion, but recent collisions between secularization and pluralistic values have created numerous challenges for Christianity in public spaces. 1. Controversies over religious education in public schools. Traditionally, Quebec and some provinces funded separate public religious schools for Catholic and Protestant students. However, Quebec passed a secularization law in 2000, converting religious schools to secular ones. In 2019, Ontario eliminated separate funding for Catholic schools, sparking protests from the Catholic community. Currently, only a few provinces retain public religious schools, while most regions emphasize secular neutrality in public education, significantly reducing church-school collaboration. 2. Tensions between same-sex marriage legalization and church positions. Canada became the 4th country globally to legalize same-sex marriage in 2005. The law requires government institutions to treat all marriages equally, but allows religious groups to refuse to perform same-sex weddings. Since then, some churches, e.g., the United Church, Anglican Church, have gradually embraced same-sex marriage, while evangelicals and Catholics have maintained traditional stances. This divide has caused internal church rifts and public debate, with some churches facing cuts to public funding for refusing to host same-sex weddings. 3. Controversies over religious symbols in public spaces. Recent debates over whether religious symbols belong in public spheres have intensified. Quebec's 2019 Act respecting the laicity of the state prohibits public servants, e.g., teachers, police officers, from wearing visible religious symbols, including crosses, at work, prompting Christian communities to accuse the government of religious discrimination. Additionally, traditional religious elements, such as parliamentary opening prayers and public Christmas decorations, face pressure to adapt due to secular neutrality principles. Christianity in Canada underscore history, distribution, practical tensions, and youth trends. Part 2. 5. Youth in Christianity. Faith choices amid secularization. Do young people still need Christianity? Is a core question for understanding the future of Christianity in Canada. 3 intertwined trends define its trajectory. 1. Declining overall participation, but counter trends in some churches. According to 2023 data from the Pew Research Center, only 22% of Canadian youth aged 18 to 34 regularly attend religious services, far lower than the 45% of those aged 55 and above. Nevertheless, charismatic churches and immigrant churches, e.g., Chinese-speaking evangelical churches, that emphasize community care and experiential worship have attracted many young people. These churches use youth fellowships, worship music, and career counseling to serve as community safe havens for young immigrants and lonely urban dwellers. 2. Digitalization and hybrid faith practices. The COVID-19 pandemic accelerated the digital transformation of churches. YouTube online worship, Zoom Bible studies, and Instagram faith sharing have become normalized for young believers. Large churches like Toronto's Elevation Church attract hundreds of thousands of young followers through high-quality online content, e.g., short videos, podcasts. Digital platforms not only serve as evangelism tools, but also as channels for nurturing young leaders. However, scholars note that online faith may lead to superficial engagement, weakening in-person community bonds. 3. Values. Inclusive plurality with core moral convictions. Multiple surveys show that young Canadian Christians hold open stances on racial equality and refugee rights, with most supporting church involvement in social justice initiatives, e.g., protesting racial discrimination, aiding the homeless. However, approximately 60% of young believers maintain conservative views on bioethical issues, such as abortion and euthanasia, contrasting with the secular society's liberal attitudes. This coexistence of pluralistic inclusivity and traditional morality is a defining feature of youth faith. 6. Case studies. Faith practices from local to urban settings. 3 representative cases illustrate the diverse faces of Christianity in Canada. 1. Catholicism in Quebec. Tensions between cultural identity and secularization. Montreal's Notre Dame Basilica is a symbol of Catholic culture, yet over 70% of its Sunday Mass attendees are aged 50 or older. Young Quebec Catholics tend to view faith as a cultural heritage rather than a daily practice. In recent years, the Church has attempted to attract youth through young adult faith camps and community service programs, but it faces significant challenges from secularization laws and young people's skepticism of church authority. 2 Chinese-speaking evangelical churches in Toronto support networks for immigrant communities. Toronto's Chinese Evangelical Church is one of the largest Chinese-speaking churches in North America, with over 5,000 members, 80% of whom are post-1990 immigrants. Beyond offering Chinese-language worship, the church provides immigration consulting, English classes, and childcare services, serving as a critical platform for new immigrants to overcome language barriers and find employment. For young Chinese Canadians, Church youth fellowships are key spaces for connecting with peers and building cultural identity. 3. Charismatic churches in Vancouver. Youthfulness and social action. Vancouver's Vineyard Church is a typical charismatic church with an average congregant age of 32, primarily consisting of young professionals and university students. The church emphasizes the fullness of the Holy Spirit and social care, organizing weekly volunteer meals for the homeless and sharing faith testimonies via Instagram short videos to attract young people. Its pastor notes, young people need not only spiritual comfort, but also to live out their faith through action. This activist faith is the core reason for its appeal to youth. 7. Academic perspectives. Why do immigrant churches and charismatic movements attract youth? Scholarly literature offers 3 explanations for the youthful highlights of Christianity in Canada. 1. Responding to community belonging, alleviating loneliness in urbanization. In immigrant cities like Toronto and Vancouver, young people often face cultural alienation and social isolation. Immigrant and charismatic churches build tight-knit communities through small group meetings and family-style dinners, providing emotional support and social networks, particularly appealing to young immigrants lacking local relatives and friends. 2. Alignment of values, integrating social justice and faith. Young people's emphasis on fairness and inclusivity aligns closely with the social justice theology of some churches, e.g., charismatic churches, the United Church. These churches transform faith into actionable values that resonate with youth rather than mere doctrinal adherence, through advocating against racial discrimination, supporting refugees, and caring for the vulnerable. 3. Adapting to digital natives, modern communication methods. Immigrant and charismatic churches excel at using communication tools familiar to young people. Short videos explaining the Bible, online prayer groups, social media interaction, and even faith-themed board games. This detraditionalized communication strategy reduces young people's sense of distance from church. 8. Challenges and pressing issues, secularization and the church's future. Christianity in Canada faces multiple challenges, stemming both from the external secular environment and internal church divisions. 1. Survival pressure from secularization. Traditional churches, e.g., Anglicanism, Catholicism, confront aging congregations and church closures. Over 1,200 Christian churches in Canada closed between 2021 and 2023, with some forced to merge due to inability to cover operational costs. Maintaining relevance amid secularization is the core challenge for traditional denominations. 2. Internal church divisions. Divisions within churches have deepened over issues such as same-sex marriage, gender identity, and abortion. Inclusive factions, e.g., United Church, Anglican Church, and conservative factions, e.g., evangelicals, Catholics, question each other's legitimacy. Some churches have lost members or even split into new denominations due to these disagreements. 3. Intergenerational tensions in immigrant churches. In immigrant churches, older believers emphasize mother tongue ministry and traditional faith practices, while younger generations prefer English worship and local adaptation. This generational gap can lead to power struggles and cultural alienation within churches. Balancing traditional inheritance and localization is a key issue for immigrant churches. 9. Future trend predictions. Conservative inferences based on data. 1. Christian proportion will continue to decline slowly, but denominational structure will adjust. According to Statistics Canada projections, by 2036, the proportion of Christians in Canada may drop below 45%. However, the relative size of evangelical and immigrant churches will increase, while traditional mainstream denominations will shrink further, making Christianity's pluralistic denominational character more pronounced. 2. Digitalization will become church norm with integrated online-offline development. After the pandemic, the hybrid model of online worship plus in-person gatherings will become mainstream. Small churches can extend their reach through digital platforms, while large churches may develop online church branches to attract young people and those with mobility issues who cannot attend in-person services. 3. Balancing religious freedom and secular neutrality will shape public spaces. If the government can find a more flexible balance between secular neutrality and religious freedom, e.g., relaxing restrictions on religious symbols in public spheres, safeguarding church participation in social services, Christianity's influence in public spaces may remain stable. Conversely, excessive emphasis on secularization could further compress Christianity's public role. Christianity in Canada is both a product of colonial history and a cultural glue for an immigrant society. It once played a central role in national institutional building and is now seeking a new identity amid secularization. Whether through the cultural persistence of Quebec's Catholicism, the community services of Toronto's immigrant churches, or the youth-oriented experiments of Vancouver's charismatic churches, Canada's Christianity reflects complexity and adaptability. Understanding the evolution of this religious tradition is not merely an academic pursuit for religious scholars, but a key to comprehending Canada's pluralistic society, immigrant experiences, and youth value orientations.